I think I should start by addressing things that my regular viewers notice at first glance. This video will have a very different production method than my previous ramblings. I hope this will decrease the workload needed until I figure out something better and will allow me to make longer videos in less time. And that means more detailed coverage on the topic, because I have to spend less hours editing this stuff. Also, I think I trained my voice to the level that subtitles are not a necessity anymore. Based on the poll on the channel community page, most of you agree. So let's try how this approach will work. Comments with the feedback would be appreciated. With that out of the way, let me finally talk a little about the actual topic of this video. After sinking into the Evilest Chronicles for a while, I thought I itched to play more tactical RPGs. While FFT is very fine, it's also, in my opinion, quite easy in terms of difficulty and simple to solve from a mechanic point of view. And that's the reason I downloaded Tactics Ogre Reborn once again and started a new save file. Fast forward around 25 hours and I was hooked again, playing not only the new save, but also loading and playing on my old one, which had around 320 hours of playtime at this point. That was in January. While writing this script, my Steam library insists that I've spent over 520 hours in this game. This number will probably go up. Finishing this tangent before I ramble too much, depth of mechanics in this game is really addicting and potentially dangerous if your mind works in a way similar to mine. And this starts from design of the character classes. My first goal is to do videos about 5 base classes, and we'll see if the topic will be engaging enough that keeps me going with the rest. But it's finally time to talk about Enchantress and Wizard classes in Tactics Ogre Reborn. The first thing I need to talk about is differences between Wizard and an Enchantress, or the lack thereof. Some classes in Tactics Ogre have different names based on the gender of the unit, and here we have an example of that. There's no mechanical or gameplay differences between those two, so I'll probably use both names throughout the video. The second thing of note is availability. You can hire new units from any shop, and recruits can join as a member of one of 5 basic classes, so you can have as many wizards in your army as you need at any point in time. So I think it's finally time to take a look at what this class has to offer, starting with spell access. We can divide them in roughly 3 categories: damage spells, support spells, and control spells. The first group is very straightforward. Wizard or Enchantress has access to direct and indirect spells of basic elements, and to their version from Dark Element. That gives them excellent coverage for elemental affinity. The damage dealing aspect of the class is kinda mid. The spells have a nice range and can apply specific elemental awares debuff on the targets. This is quite important if you want to stack modifiers to trigger bigger numbers from other classes. But all in all, not much to write home about here. In my opinion, they are more of a setup unit than an actual damage dealer. Now, their support side is a whole different matter. Let's start from 2 drain spells. Both Drain Heart and Drain Mind are dark spells that care about line of sight. Both cost 30 MP to cast and have RT cost of plus 16, which is still on the lower side of the cost scale for spellcasting. Those are mostly used for self-sustain, but draining MP from the target can really limit its options during the turn. So sometimes it's a good choice even if our Wizard or Enchantress have a full MP pool. After that we have Spell Charge, which is the first dedicated support spell of the class. The basic principle is very simple. At the cost of our own MP, we can grant MP to the target. The spell has a nice range of 6, so using it to boost MP of our frontliners is quite easy, and can be a great use of backline resources. RT cost is also not so bad, sitting at plus 20. Spell Charge can enable other units to use their best abilities turn after turn, even if they don't have MP generating passives. and that can snowball into absurd damage per turn. Especially if we have a unit that's spamming one of the most broken spells in the game. That's also in Enchantress repertoire, Paradigm Shift. If you ever used Quick in FFT, you'll quickly recognize how OP this thing is. Sure, it costs 100 MP to use, adds plus 30 RT to the character after casting it, and has a short range of 3, but it can target up to 5 targets and has fixed 66% chance of setting their current RT value to 0. Yes, that means you can give up to 5 extra turns to your party with single cast. And some good RNG, of course. In some cases, even a single success can change the course of the battle, so you should really think about spending MP of any spellcaster that can cast Paradigm Shift. The rest of the spells available land in the control category. Those inflict some kind of status effect on the target and have a quite different formula of success calculations. To be honest, it's a very simple formula. For each point of intent mind of the caster, we increase the success chance by 1%. Then that number is reduced by 1.2% for each point of target avoidance and 0.8 for each point of target's mind. Now with math out of the way, we can move to the spells itself. Torpor is one of the most useful ones. Nice range, low MP and RT cost. It applies slow to a single target. Great for bosses and to turn off dangerous units. The usefulness drops a little bit in the late game when we get access to more sources of this debuff. Battery Burst ranks a little bit lower on my personal list. It's a nice tool and has its place during the gameplay, but usually you can find something better to do. It can skip some turns of dangerous enemies, but the damage reduction it gives is a real downside. Very situational. Paralytic Wave is our first AoE debuff in the toolset. Low MP cost, low RT cost, nice range and up to 5 targets. Unfortunately, stun is not exactly reliable as a control tool. It has around 40% chance of causing the target to stumble during action, which is nice. But sometimes RNG just does not go in your favor. There are much better sources for this debuff, so in my opinion you can easily skip this one as a spell. Poison Cloud on the other hand can be a very good spell in right encounters. Its range is a little bit shorter, but it is still an AoE debuff spell. Applying poison to a group of tightly packed enemy frontliners is actually much easier than you would think. And while fighting dragons or golems in early chapters, this thing can deal a lot of damage. Sleep on the other hand is probably the most useless spell in Wizard's arsenal. The debuff itself is quite okay, but for 20 MP and 14 RT you can do much better than potentially skip 1 of 2 turns of a single unit. I think it's just not worth it. You'll be better off using Battery Burst. And finally we have Charm, which is a great spell when used in smart way. It requires some battlefield awareness, but if you charm a spellcaster who has a nice MP pool banked, he can not only not be a threat to you for a few turns, but even an asset that spams AoE spells on the enemy backline. And with that we reach the end of Wizard's spell list. Before moving to the skills, I think I need to talk a little bit about some other aspects of the class. The generic unit has base RT 75 as an Enchantress or Wizard. Class also has a base movement range of 3 with movement type slow, and that means each square of movement adds 5 to the character RT value. With some gear equipped, Wizard or Enchantress usually hangs around 90 to 95 base RT, which is not so bad, but their low base movement range can limit their positioning options, especially on larger mobs. With their low jump value, traversing terrain without dedicated steps will be a problem. But there's some good news. The skills that Enchantress or Wizard have access can negate most of those problems. So let's take a quick look at those now. The first thing you can notice is the fact that even the max level Enchantress has a very slim selection of skills. The first 3 are just weapon skills. Equipping those will increase the damage of attacks using selected weapon type and offensive spells. They also grant access to finishing moves. But since the very powerful effect of increased spell range can be found mostly on casuals, you should probably focus on that. It isn't mandatory, since you can set up a loadout without any direct damage spells, but it's a good thing to know that. Resist Charm and Resist Petrify do exactly what their description suggests. They grant you additional resistance against those effects. But there's a rather big, let's say, feature in the enemy AI scripting in this game. They will always prioritize dealing damage over status effects. So we'll never use non-damaging crowd control spells like Charm or Petri Burst. I think only basilisks have a damaging attack that can petrify, so that may be the edge case to consider. Other than that, feel free to skip those. Insight can be useful on some builds. A flat 10 or 20% increase in MP pool is noticeable if you're spamming spell charge turn after turn, but that's it. Next we have Coax, the recruit skill designed to be used on lizardmen and lamias, and basically nothing else. If you find them during a fight and want to add to your party, use this. In other cases, just skip this altogether. Now it's time for more useful part of skill set. Starting with Meditate. It's an auto skill that has a 40% chance of activation at the beginning of the unit's turn, and grants a substantial amount of NP, based on the rank of the skill, of course. This is probably a must-have skills in almost any spellcaster builds, and designers seems to agree, since each mage-like class in this game has access to at least some level of this. Next on the list of very useful skills we have Engulf, another auto skill, this time with 25% chance of activation, that increases spell range of the next spell by 2 or 3, depending on the rank. And it's one of those tools that can negate wizards' poor movement options. Must have on big maps, on smaller ones you can probably live without it. Unfortunately, the first rank shows up at level 25, which is already around mid-game. Okay, after that, time for our first probably broken skill. Conserve RT. Available since level 15, it's an auto skill with 25% chance of activation, and an absolute basic functionality. It causes the next spell cast by Enchantress or Wizard to add a big round 0 to their RT value. Perfect thing if you want to cast high RT spells turn after turn. More of that later in the example section. For now, let's finish the skills breakdown with Concentration. This auto skill has a 40% activation rate and grants spell strike to the unit, which means a plus 30% chance to hit with the spells. Perfect for a debuffer variant of the wizard, not exactly necessary in other cases. As you may have noticed, this class is not exactly drowning in options when it comes to skills. You customize it more with the spell choices, and just slot the most efficient options for the role you choose for specific wizard. So let's take a quick look at some example loadouts and how to use them in combat. The first one is basic damage spellcaster setup. We need a single target spell and an AoE spell that matches the unit's elemental affinity for more damage. And I've added Poison Cloud as a dot for those heavy armored units with mountains of HP. The last spell slot went for Spell Charge, since sometimes a best damage a wizard can do is via giving his MP to another unit. As far as skills go, we'll start with Cudgels for extra accuracy and damage of our direct spells, then Engulf for extra range, Meditate for MP generation, and Conserve RT for less RT between casting of spells. There's not much strategy here, you just blast the most damage you can each turn, be it with direct damage spells or with Poison Cloud if you have appropriate target. And that's it. Very straightforward playstyle. The second one is focused on debuffing the enemies in various ways. Spell loadout starts with Torpor, then Petri Burst, followed by Poison Cloud and Char. Skill choices are basically the same, with one difference. We change cudgels to concentration. In this variant we don't have any direct damage spells, so boost from weapon skills will not apply, and we get much more success rate when concentration procs. Gameplay wise, this setup is a little more complicated. We have the option of semi-hard disable with Petri Burst, as well as damage potential with charm applied to dangerous units at the right time. Poison Cloud still works best when we cast it into a crowd of armored frontliners. Torpor, on the other hand, is quite demanding with the choice of the target and timing. In my opinion, the best target for this is a sturdy unit you plan to focus fire on. Both Petri Burst and Charm are not best options in that scenario, but if you stick your target in place for longer, that's a big upside. Also, quite a lot of bosses are immune to Charm, Petrify and Poison, but not slow. And that's the main reason why this is on the loadout. We sacrifice raw damage for battlefield control options and damage over time. And finally, the third setup I would like to showcase: Support Wizard. The main use case for this is funneling our MP into other units, or giving them additional turns. We achieved that with Spell Charge and Paradigm Shift. We still have Poison Cloud slotted, since that spell is really that good. And the final slot goes to an AoE spell that matches our Enchantress elemental affinity. Skill loadout is the same as in the previous variant. Engulf, Meditate, Conserve RT and Concentration. Weapon skills are not exactly needed, since the only spell damage is on the lowest spot on our priority list. Gameplay here is kind of boring, not gonna lie. Mostly waiting, banking MP and positioning in range. But when something is needed, you can always have an option of charging MP for specific skill or granting additional turns to others, better suited for the actual job. In case of boredom, there's Poison Cloud for damage sponges, or that AoE spell for finishing enemies in critical HP. You can of course mix and match those examples for your specific party composition, but the main thing I want to convey here is this. Wizard and Enchantress are not your default magical DPS unit. To be honest, they are quite bad at this role. But as an entry class they are quite useful and have a nice niche to fill later in the game, after you have access to classes that can actually be called magical nukes. And I think I'll end my ramblings on that, but I reiterate something from the start of video. It is the first video of this kind and I would like to get some feedback about it from my viewers. So if you have some thoughts about this kind of content, drop them in the comment section down below. And see ya in the next one.